Nikki, the podcast. Wake up.
Oh.
Oh my
Hey
God.
guys, welcome to the IBS Freedom Podcast. I am joined by my very sleepy co-host, Amy Hollenkamp, R to the D. And
Hey, everybody.
today, if you couldn't tell, we are talking about sleep. Sleep. My favorite topic.
Ooh.
So I hope that we, like you said before we started that, I hope we win an Emmy for that performance of like a sleep Nikki and a sleep Amy. If you're not watching this on YouTube, if this is audio only, then you really missed out. You should go check out the YouTube video of that because I'm sure it's going to be quite amusing. But
Oh my gosh. I'm like crying because I'm laughing. I'm physically trying to recover from that. It was how hard you committed to being asleep that I wasn't expecting. I like assumed a really cute, like unrealistic sleep pose, and you went
something
straight.
That's still flattering.
Right. You went straight there, straight to the deep sleep. Oh my gosh.
If I felt like spit would have showed up on the camera, I would have mustered like a little bit of drool. Also, because I feel like that could also be kind of a classic, but I figured it wouldn't really show up on the camera anyway, so what's the point?
Right. Oh my gosh. I am like hot because I'm sweating, or because I was laughing so hard and like trying to control it because I had to do my role.
Yes. And you executed it beautifully. I am so proud.
I don't know. I was losing my mind.
You're not usually the first to speak, so that was kind of a big step for you too.
One of these days, I'm gonna have to introduce us and try to really match the energy that you present. But I just feel like you do such a great job with the energy of the intro that I don't know. I don't think I can live up to that. So
we won't mess with it. Besides, I still, I have a role. I start us off, and then I always kick it to you of, all right, so we're talking about sleep, so give us a little primer on the sleep thing. So I always make you go first with, like, the actually clinically relevant stuff anyway. So we share the load. Hashtag share the load. Okay, so to that point, we're talking about sleep and how it affects the gut and how freaking important it is, but you want to give us a little bit of a primer or a little bit of a starting point, and then we will converse.
Yes. I think from a sleep something that I feel like so many people are not focusing as much time and energy on. There's so much focus on the diet side of things and the supplements that sometimes I'll talk to people and they're getting either really poor quality sleep. I think that's pretty common. They're waking up a lot in the middle of the night. Maybe they're having trouble falling asleep. And then sometimes just the hours are not enough, not sufficient. And it's so normalized in our culture, kind of like stress. We talk about stress, and not getting sleep is a stressor in and of itself. Yeah. But I feel like it's this I'll sleep when I'm dead mentality is so prevalent in our culture.
Or that burn the candle at both ends.
Right. And it's one of those things too where I almost have to press people, and I have intake forms, so I'm not typically pressing too hard, but press them on like, because sometimes they'll be like, oh, I get enough sleep. And it's like, well, what does that mean exactly? And they're like, like 6 hours solid. And I'm like, oh, you probably need more than that. So there's, I think just having a reference point that's skewed because of our culture, or maybe like how your parents slept, like what the people around you, how their sleep habits were. But I think some of the research on sleep and circadian rhythms in the gut health space have more recently been popping up, and how important that can be at regulating the microbiome, motility, and I think just in general stress on the body. Your body needs to recover, and sleep allows your body to recover. So it's such an important piece, and I'm glad we're talking about it, because I oftentimes think, like stress, it's like an afterthought. Like, oh, you should be getting more sleep. But sometimes people that aren't getting enough sleep aren't probably paying as much of attention as they should to it.
Well, I find too, like the recommendations oftentimes are very non-specific, or they feel really like floaty. And then it's hard to actually make a change based on that. Like, eat more vegetables, or like eat vegetables. Like, okay, so if you have one serving of carrots a week, you can tell yourself that you eat vegetables. But
Right.
like kind of quantifying it and having a benchmark or a goal, like I think we talked about last time, makes more sense. And that way you could basically assess and keep an eye on things, and you can know more discernibly, like, am I doing a good job at this? Yes or no. And I feel like similarly, sleep is such a thing where it's like, oh, get more sleep.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, but how specifically? And that's where you can really get into picking apart, like you said, are you not getting enough sleep? Is it shifted? Like, are you like in some crazy night owl mode where you're going to bed super late, waking up super late, and you're out of sync with the rest of the world? Is it that, which did I say first? Like poor quality, not enough, or a shifted schedule, or something else in between? Like, trying to iron out, okay, what exactly about your sleep needs improvement, and how can we help your body rest and recover and rejuvenate itself before you have to go live another day of human life. Um,
Right. Right. Like it's what you're saying so true. Like everything that we do, there almost has to be some level of investigation as to what's driving the dysfunction. Because a lot of times people know, like, oh, I need to get 8 hours, or like, oh, I'm gonna try to get more sleep, but sometimes they just can't. Like, they're waking up a lot, the quality's poor. Sometimes it is like more of a choice, and there can be things like they're just not going to bed at a particular time, and they're decent sleepers. But I think more often the clients that I talk to are struggling with the quality of their sleep. There's some that aren't getting enough hours because they're just not going to bed at a similar time each night. They don't really have a good nighttime routine. That's pretty consistent. But I think a lot of people too that I work with are trying pretty hard to get sleep, but it's frustrating because they can't. And there's lots of potential reasons for that we can get into, but you're right, it takes peeling back some of the layers of like, is this a bedtime issue? Is it a blood sugar issue at night that oftentimes causes people to wake up? Is it
a bed issue? Like, does your pillow or your bed totally suck?
Right.
Like that also, the chiropractor in me, I have a question on my questionnaires asking people, like, how old is your bed? And I remember somebody recently, I don't remember which patient it was, but somebody recently said that their bed was pretty new, I think like 6 months old. And they mentioned in the notes, they said, I used to get horrible sleep, and then I got this new bed, and now I sleep like a champion. So, like, if you have a really old bed or a really uncomfortable bed, or if you run really hot at night, maybe you need a bed that's going to, like, take away some of the heat from your body. Like, that might be worth considering, too. But, yeah, the thing that you're sleeping on can play a big role in this as well.
Yeah, that's such a great point. I'm someone who's very, very temperature sensitive at night, like for the longest time. And it took me some time to realize this, but I couldn't sleep really well in the same bed as my husband. Like I would get super hot and then I'd like throw the covers off and then get super cold. Like I couldn't temperature regulate if someone else was in the room or in the bed, I mean. And it's because like, I mean, if someone else is another 98-degree person is in your bed, it's going to change the whole temperature of the bed.
So what was your solution?
So
you kicked Armand out. Go sleep in the shed.
I had two solutions. A king size bed helped like push him away. Get out of here, get out of my zone. So a king size bed helped because I recognized too every time we went to like a hotel that was a king size bed, I slept fine. Because he was further away. There could be a gap.
Get away from me.
Right. Get out of here. And then I also started using a chili pad. Have you heard of these?
I have. I was going to ask if you've ever used that, or the Ooler is the other one, right? They're the same company, but it's a slightly different product, right? Chili pad versus Ooler?
I think they're the same. Maybe. I could be wrong. Okay. I need to double check.
Or maybe like a next generation thing.
Yeah, I think it is a next generation thing. Okay. I think they had like an original one, but it's basically, it goes over your bed. It's almost like a mattress topper. And it has little you're cringing because you're already cold listening.
This is my worst nightmare. I already know. So continue.
But it has little piping, like that water flows through the whole thing. And so it pumps water in and cools the water. So essentially it's like an air conditioner for your bed. That's how it's kind of marketed. So you're sleeping on like a certain temperature. And I find that sometimes it's different. Like usually I'll set it at around 64 or 65 degrees under me. And it helps me sleep. I sleep really well with a chili pad.
I've heard amazing things about it. I've debated getting one for my husband because he throws off heat like a freaking furnace.
Yeah, he would probably really like it. Again, I found it really helpful for sleep. And again, temperature, especially at night, can affect sleep too. Yeah. If you're not necessarily a great sleeper, that could be something to play around with.
Yeah. And even just the thermostat. Sorry to interrupt you, but
right, just the thermostat for sure.
I have a question on my sleep questionnaire where I ask them, what temperature is your thermostat set to at night? And then there's another checkbox like, do you and your family agree on this temperature? And I kid you not, one of my patients, I'll never forget, her husband, who was also a patient of mine, her husband grew up, I forget, in like Alabama or Mississippi, somewhere where it's hot and humid. And he always wanted it to be hot and humid. And I forget where she grew up, definitely not there, Switzerland or Germany, I think. And she would complain about it. But then I came to be that they kept their house at 80 degrees.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And my poor patient was like massively fatigued. And that was a conversation to be had. I don't remember what they ended up doing with it, but like, no, but I don't even think I could sleep with that temperature. Like, I'm a corpse person, but I think that even for me, 80 degrees, I'd be like, oh, I'm done.
Yeah. I agree.
So I do the opposite of you. I have a heated blanket. It's just a twin size one, but I preheat my bed in the winter and like the spring and the fall. But like I preheat the bed for a while. And then I get in and it's like boiling lava hot. I'm just like, oh. And every single night, every night of my life, I get in bed and I'm like, oh, I love the heated blanket. And my husband laughs at me because or I say, I hope the person who invented heated blankets is filthy stinking rich because they deserve it. But I always remark on how much I love my heated blanket and I leave it on and I cook with it for like half an hour or so. And then I turn it off before I actually go to bed. So.
Oh my gosh, I love that.
Myself. Yeah.
Well, I know that, so the chili pad actually can heat up to 110 degrees as well. So it goes both directions. So if you're someone that is, but I would assume that it would be way cheaper just to get a heated blanket than to do a chili pad. I think, again, it's much more cost effective if you want a cooler bed than hotter bed. But I really do like the chili pad. I find it really helpful for me. And it's interesting too, like I remember like being in a dorm in college, and at the beginning there was no air conditioning in the dorm. So like, and we were there in like August.
And you went to school in Kentucky, right?
Well, this was actually at a school called Denison. That was my first year. I actually played basketball there very briefly and then transferred. But Denison is actually like a small liberal arts school in Ohio. It's kind of near Columbus, so like central Ohio. Okay. But still, I mean, it was like 95 degrees outside during the day and then, super hot at night. And I remember sleeping so horrible. And I just think it's such a big factor for so many people. And playing around with the temperature is a really good suggestion. Even thermostat, even like fans, too, in the room. It's so funny because Armand does not like fans in the room. Like, we're both like finicky about temperature, but like in opposite directions. But it's an interesting one, and it can regulate circadian rhythms too. Temperature can. So again, if you're typically at a colder temperature at night, it might help with sleep, but it does vary, I think,
generally
person to
speaking. Yeah, and even for me, again, I'm a self-proclaimed corpse person, but even for us, like I think Mike keeps the thermostat at like 68 or 69 at night.
Yeah.
And then like I will pile up the blankets, but you're actually better off having a cool room with a bunch of blankets on you, as opposed to having the heat turned up higher or having the air conditioner set to a higher temperature, because then at least you have the flexibility that you can remove a blanket if you need to.
Right.
But if you have that thermostat cranked up to like 72, 75, 80, you can't really do much about that other than maybe a fan or a chili pad. So where you set your thermostat is probably one of the first things to be addressed if you are having crappy sleep. What are some other like really basic, basic moves for, do you know what that reference is from? I feel like maybe your husband would.
That's that one show with Kristen Bell.
Yes. Yeah, The Good Place. When
The
she's
Good
like,
Place.
You know what, Michael? You're basic.
Yeah.
So anyway, what are some other basic moves that you do to help people sleep better, even before we get into the nitty gritty of like falling asleep, staying asleep, circadian rhythm, etc.?
I think basics, usually with basic stuff, I like when I first work with a client to understand what's going on with their sleep, and see how it changes with some of the basic things. So one thing is nutrition in general. Like getting nutrition to be adequate can usually help a lot with sleep. Like if someone's under eating, I would expect that they could have really poor sleep.
Yeah.
So if under eating's at play, that's like primary step. So usually I'll be like, oh, let's check back in on sleep once we get nutrition up to where it needs to be. Typically, I will also try to help people establish like good light patterns. So trying to get some natural light in the morning to prime their body to understand that this is morning time. So it kind of anchors hormones and digestive processes and things like that in our body. If you have the master clock of the circadian rhythm being anchored by light patterns. So getting some natural light in the morning, I think, can be helpful. And that can be like through a window. I think obviously getting outside would be best, but we all can't do that. I have a window kind of right here. You can sort of see it getting some natural light on my face. But I think getting natural light can be really beneficial. Yeah. And I think the opposite's true with bedtime, is trying to avoid things like blue light that can affect melatonin release. Yeah.
And melatonin, for those of you who aren't aware, is something that it's a neurotransmitter or neurochemical that is released in your brain, and it's what tells you, okay, now is sleepy time. So it initiates sleep. It doesn't necessarily keep you asleep, but it initiates sleep, or it makes you sleepy. So continue.
And I think that limiting that, even if you're kind of wearing blue blockers, trying to kind of dim some lights at night, or like have kind of dimmer night light.
Mood lighting.
Mood lighting at night. I also think just in general consistency of bed and wake up times, if possible, is so important. I find too, and we've talked about it in the past, like one of the hardest parts that I think, having a child so stressful is how dysregulated sleep gets with like sleep timing and those sorts of things. We can maybe talk about that a little bit more, but I actually think that like sometimes people will never recover sleep timing, like sleep wake times, falling to sleep times for a long period of time, maybe ever. Like sometimes I'm talking to people it's been 3 or 4 years since they had their kid, and they've just never gotten back to a good sleep cycle. But typically meal times, bedtime, wake times, I think could be helpful with circadian rhythms. Those would be probably the basic things I would have people try.
Let me ask you this.
Go ahead.
Do you advocate no screen time before bed?
I do. I do. I think there's people that still do. From what just working with people, I think it's a hard thing to break.
A hard sell.
Right. And I think the probably worst thing to do is be on your phone and it's this far away from your face. Especially if you don't have any blue blockers or anything that's kind of affecting the tint.
Yeah.
My husband's a bad culprit of this.
I was just going to lean to the microphone and say, do you hear this, Michael Danessa? Do you hear this?
Oh my gosh.
Because my husband too.
Yeah, I don't know. And I even bought Armand blue blockers and he just doesn't wear them. I'm like, this is like this close to your face, shining blue light in, like it's right before bed. But we have some work to do, Nikki, with our husbands. But
yes, even Mike, like we will sometimes watch YouTube videos in bed. Like if there's last night there was a new episode of You Suck at Cooking. Have you seen this channel at all?
No.
Oh, I'll send it to you later. So there was a new episode of You Suck at Cooking. So we kind of gathered around the phone, and when we watch things on my phone like that, 8 times out of 10, he will complain vehemently about the red filter app that I have.
Right. I have the red filter too.
Can you disable that? Can you turn that off? And I'm like, no, because it's for the exact purpose what we're using it for now. We are watching something on the phone. I could disable it if we weren't looking at the phone, but he gets all perturbed and I can't see it. It's all I'm like, oh well.
Right. Right. I have that on my phone and it always freaks people out. They're like, why's your phone red? I'm like,
my favorite is when I send screen captures to somebody, like a patient or a friend, and then the entire screen capture is like a pinkish reddish.
Oh my gosh.
They're like, what's wrong with it? And I'm like, oh, my circadian rhythm. Let me tell you about it.
Right. Yeah. So again, I'm certainly someone that at times will be on my phone at night. Usually I try to have my blue blockers on and have some things to mitigate it. I have, the red on my phone too. This kind of jazzy.
Oh, yours is redder than mine.
Yeah, mine. Mine, you click the home button. Is that how yours is? I know yours is an Android, right?
Oh, yeah, mine's an Android. Do you have an iPhone?
Yes.
Okay, maybe that's why. Yeah, so mine, let me see if I can put it up to the screen. All right, so I have an app called Twilight, and I think if I click this, okay, maybe not. Oh, there we go. It very gradually got pinker, and now it's back to normal. That was very not compelling. It looks really pink, but yours is really, really red. Yeah, that's
people are like, what is going on?
Yeah, mine is gentler than that, but
that's why people are like, what's wrong with your phone?
Yeah,
it's like a demon has possessed it.
Yep. Yeah, and I use the app on my phone, and I have one installed on my computer called Flux that does the same exact thing. Yeah. And then I will wear my big geeky orange goggles in addition to that. And then that's kind of my normal jam. But yeah, I think it's such a hard sell, the idea of no screen time.
It is.
Before bed. Because all of us just want to unwind for the day and look at our phones.
Right, right.
I've been trying to get better about that. I mean, again, my kind of defragment method for the evening is I'll watch YouTube videos, usually about Japan. And I'm planning my trip to Japan someday, so I'll watch something related to Japan, typically, or the occasional You Suck at Cooking video. Right. But yeah, that's my downtime. But I'm trying to get better, and I go kind of in spurts. I'm getting better about reading an actual physical book. For those younger viewers who might not be aware, we used to have things called books, and it was paper, so they would cut very thin slices of trees and then they would print words on it. And so I have some of these archaic books at my house that I'm working through gradually. But I'm trying to get better about reading a physical book rather than watching a Try Guys video or something on my phone. Right. So I'm getting a little bit better about that.
I'm the same way. I think for me, I get into really good trends with, or on a really good roll with reading. there are times where I'm just like, it's like 2 or 3 months I'm reading every night before bed, and then other times I definitely will be more on my phone. And I think, again, there's ways to mitigate it. I think blue blockers helps. If you feel like that's like just a really great way to unwind, I'm usually not going to like have someone stress too much about it. One thing too that I heard from Dave Mayo, who does a lot of circadian rhythm stuff, he was saying, I